Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Alexander Lukashenko, Europe's self-confessed last dictator, should require no introduction. Weaponized migration, aiding Russian war effort against Ukraine, persecution of opposition and the free media at home, Lukashenko is a man of many dubious talents. However, with a recent series of pardons for political prisoners and the general unease about Moscow's desire to extend its control over Minsk policies, questions are being asked about the future direction of Lukashenko. Can he still try to turn things around in an unlikely redemption arc, or has this ship already sailed a long time ago? Joining us now is Anatol Kotau, Belarusian Democratic Forces Forum. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
So, is Lukashenko actually trying to trick us? I mean, he keeps releasing political prisoners, but he's also making new arrests as well.
The tricky thing that Lukashenko now is trying to play several games at the same time. So, at the one hand, he tries to show that there is some window of opportunities to talk with the West, and that's why he releases political prisoners since June, and I should stress that all this process has started actually after Polish ultimatum to Lukashenko. Then the railway transit was blocked for 33 hours, something like this, and only after that pressure, Lukashenko started to seek for room to negotiate with the West. I guess.
So he felt the heat and he tried to react to that.
Yeah, and I guess the number of political prisoners, which is on the one hand unprecedented, released political prisoners, in comparison to previous times, but it's too low in comparison with the total number of political prisoners, because there is more than 400 right now internationally recognized political prisoners, and even more people arrested for political reasons in Belarus right now in jail. It shows that his search for some way to negotiate with the West is quite limited.
Well, also, apparently, not all of these releases were unconditional. Some people were coerced into making confessions.
That's true, and Lukashenko tries to use each and every release of political prisoners in Belarus to serve his own goals. On the one hand, all these all these releases are being named as an act of humanity or something like this. Of course, they are not. And on the other hand, people who are being released right now, they are advised, I would say, not to talk to media too much.
So should the West rush to the negotiating table already, or should we wait for major moves being made? I mean, among those still not released, former presidential candidates like Viktor Babaryka, also Polish activist Andrzej Poczobut, still in jail. Do you think that Lukashenko expects the West to fall for it? Also, according to Viasna, about 200 people released, but even more arrested before the so-called elections are taking place next year.
Yeah, that's true. I guess...
what should be our response to this?
I guess Lukashenko's plan is to release even more people, but after the elections. Will be Lukashenko, I would say, in power, or will be Lukashenko as autonomous as he is right now? I mean, his dependence on Russia, which is growing, apparently, I don't know. And I would say the moves from the West should have been actually very prompt and very decisive, because Lukashenko understands only this language of pressure, only language of ultimatum. So either West is ready to fight for Belarus and face Russia, either not, because with time passing by since 2020 and even earlier times, the dependence of Belarus is constantly growing, the dependence of Belarus on Russia.
And the military presence, right? I mean,
the military
2020, we didn't have nuclear missiles, we didn't have the alleged Oreshnik deliveries, the weapon that Russia keeps advertising as being brand new and impossible to intercept, which of course it might be Russian propaganda to some extent. But do you think that it was a wasted opportunity back in 2020? Massive protests, people in the streets. Right now, civic society has been, to a large extent, driven back by the repressions.
That's true. That was some sort of missed opportunity, but I guess nobody was ready to some sort of uprisal in Belarus at large at that moment, and even more. I constantly now compare situation in Belarus to the situation in Eastern Europe when the Soviet Union was, I would say, in its power. And nobody in the West cared about uprisals in Poland, Hungary, or former Yugoslavia, which were actually brutally pacified by Soviet Union. The same situation is right now. If you want to fight for Belarus, if you want to fight for Georgia, you should keep in mind that the Russia is behind, but the Russia is weak right now.
Georgia, actually, it's a good example. It's an inflection point, right? The things are still happening there. Belarus, regrettably, has been allowed to languish under Lukashenko, but it could still go back to a democratic pathway if Lukashenko was ousted. Do you think it is likely to happen anytime soon, though? How strong is this regime? Like, people were looking at Syria, saying it's unlikely that this regime is going to happen. All of a sudden, Bashar al-Assad is in Moscow. His regime is in tatters.
From this point of view, all the dictatorship regimes are the same. They are strong enough when they are fighting their own people. If they are fighting something more than their own people, they are extremely weak. It turned out that it was enough to have some, I would say, volunteers with arms in Syria to, of course, backed up by Turkey, to Bashar Assad regime disappear in a moment.
So one quick question. When should Europe begin possible talks with Belarus? Should we basically say, we're not going to do anything unless all of these people, more than 1,400, are set free?
Actually, Europe should start some negotiations with Lukashenko immediately, but only after some strong moves are done by Europe. I mean, the second ultimatum to Lukashenko, then he will be interested in such negotiations and such talks, because now his interest in negotiations with the West is limited to securing his position in the parallel negotiations with Russia.
And of course, conducting the so-called elections with candidates that have no chances of winning. They're all Lukashenko supporters.
Yeah.
Coincidence, perhaps. Anatol Kotau was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight. And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more.